G'day everyone, Jeff Markham here, President of the Band Association New South Wales, and I have our lead brass adjudicator with us today. Well, actually, no, we won't call you that. As Howard's the other one. He might get his nose out of joint, mightn't he? Shall we start again?
Yep.
G'day everyone, Jeff Markham, President of the Band Association New South Wales here, and I'm here with one of our esteemed brass adjudicators, Mr. Ron Prussing. Ron, it's wonderful to see you again and fantastic to have you on board adjudicating for the first ever Australian National Online Festival of Bands.
It's a real privilege to be asked to do it. I really like the concept of the format, in that we're not participating or competing for points, but just for individual awards for each submission in the different sections. And I think that's a great idea, seeing that we can't be in a hall with live performances. I think it's a great way to go.
Yeah, it made there was a few things that made it necessary to go down that path, which is one of those was not being in the one venue to be able to record, plus just the various and subsequently the variations in recording standards and abilities and so forth. But yeah, it's been an interesting exercise, I must admit. But obviously the response, we've had 76 bands across the festival, so the response has been quite good. So now what I've asked is, I've asked you if you could join us so that we can do a bit of a get to know you session, and I've just got a few questions that I'd like to go through, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Just for our faithful viewers to get to know you as Ron Prussing as our adjudicator. First off, Ron, if you could just give us a brief rundown on your career, who you are, your career, what instrument you play and started on, and yeah, what you've been up to recently as well.
Well, I started in brass bands when I was a young boy in the Salvation Army. I learned a cornet for a little while, and then my father had me taught the piano, which I really enjoyed and really did quite well at. And then fast forward ahead to that, and I won a position in the Conservatorium High School, and that really changed my life, because I had to take up a second study. Seeing I was a keyboard entrant, I had to take up a non-keyboard instrument, and I'd always loved the trombone, and I heard some very, very fine trombone players in brass bands. And then, of course, when I went to the Conservatorium, I started listening to orchestral music, and I took up the trombone as my second study. There were so many good pianists in the world, and in that school and around the Conservatorium, I thought, no, I'm going to make the trombone my first study. And so I swapped over. And, subsequent to that, I started playing in orchestras in the student orchestra. I won a position the year after I took up the trombone. I won a position in the Australian Youth Orchestra to tour to Japan, which was the first government-sponsored youth orchestra, Australian Youth Orchestra tour to ever take them internationally. And they went to the Osaka Festival, the World Expo in Osaka in 1970. And then since then, I just studied and got work. I started work that same year. I did my first casual job with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, and so this year marks 51 years of association with that orchestra, and this year also marks, it's in May, I will have completed 41 years of permanent membership of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. So I'm principal trombone there, and I've been that for a long time.
That's impressive, an impressive achievement. And
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. That's fantastic. And I know you've done a bit of conducting work over your career as well.
Yep. I conducted brass bands from when I was about 19 years of age, and then I started off at the Petersham Salvation Army Band,
Mhm.
And then I did 17 years as the musical director of the Sydney Congress Hall Band of the Salvation Army, which is a very, very fine band indeed. We did some 3 international tours with that band.
Mhm.
And I've also conducted Waratah Brass for a number of years. And we were a very successful band in the competition area. And they're a terrific community band, you know, really, really into the community in a big way in Newcastle there. Wonderful, wonderful group of people and great, great players in it. And then I also was the musical director for 2 years of the Sydney Youth Orchestra, took them on an international tour to Spain. And just recently, I've conducted the brass section of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra as well as the Symphonia a few years ago. But we just did a concert at the Sunset Piazza, which the City of Sydney Council set up to attract live performance and audiences back into the city in the afternoons. And I'm conducting the brass section of the orchestra in a concert in a couple of weeks' time in the Sydney Town Hall. So yes, I've done a lot of conducting.
Yep.
And I enjoy it.
Excellent. Cool. It's as I put together, it's a wide body of work, and which is rather impressive. As an adjudicator, and I know this is it's a really great privilege for us because in in New South Wales, because of your close association with many community bands over a number of years, it's been difficult for us to be able to get you to do a lot of work for us as an adjudicator.
Yeah.
But but you've had a bit of a break from community bands for a while, and the festival has provided us with a great opportunity to be able to have you involved. The As an adjudicator, what are you looking for out of bands when you're looking at listening to works?
Well, I'm looking for an overall sense of ensemble, people moving together, blending together. Particularly with the brass band, you have a limited range of colours or base colours. That is, you have basically your mellows and your brights, your
Mhm.
cylindrical and your conical bore instruments. And so the great composers for the brass band manipulate those instruments and score for those instruments in very specific ways. And I'm looking for the conductors and the bands to bring out all of the different shades of colour that are available in the bands that the composer writes into the score. So they should concentrate on ensemble, that is moving together, placement of the notes. They should concentrate very much on intonation, which really influences the overall sound of the band. If things are in tune, the warmth of the sound and the blend of the sound is just so much more interesting. Concentrate on the basics of music making, you know, good production on the brass instrument, good dynamics, good ensemble, as I've said already, and just work at the simple things. And then it's up to the musical director to bring out the musical phrasing and the highlights in the composition that they choose to play. And I'll not be looking for so much the difficulty of the piece that they choose to play in any particular section, but the way that they play it.
Mhm.
And it's important to choose material that your band can play, you know, and you know, that's important. Those decisions have largely been made already, but I'm really looking forward to hearing good presentation of the material that they've chosen to present in each section.
Cool. Cool. Very, yeah. And it's that's it's interesting that you say that choosing bands to choose music that they can play as opposed to difficult music. Because, gosh, we've all played in bands that have gotten tripped up with doing that at times, and we've also seen vice versa.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Two more questions. The
Sure.
next one for you is what's your favorite piece of music and composer that you've experienced?
Look, that that's a very difficult question for me to answer. When you consider the number of concerts that I've given in a concert hall, literally all over the world. I've been fortunate to play in nearly all of the major concert halls in the world, including the Berlin Philharmonic, the new hall up in Manchester, Boston Symphony Hall, Carnegie Hall. The orchestra has given me a great opportunity to play in some of these places. And so along with all of those concerts, the repertoire that we have covered in 40 years or more is enormous. But going through all of that repertoire, I would say that for me, the most profound piece that moves me would be Bruckner Symphony No. 8. Most of the Mahler symphonies, particularly No. 3 and No. 6, and Stravinsky, The Rite of Spring was the quintessential 20th century piece that opened up a whole new vista for composers to pursue. Beethoven moves me every time I hear just about any of his music, the symphonies, the piano concertos, the piano sonatas, the violin sonatas. I mean, Beethoven really, he's the base, he's the granite base upon which all of that sort of music was based. Applying that to the brass band, I would say that Eric Ball was one of the most profoundly gifted composers for the brass band. Wilfred Heaton didn't write a lot, but what he wrote was truly gifted, truly inspirational. I don't know where he ever got the idea to write something like contest music. That's just magnificent, pure music. His Salvation Army publication, which has been used in the hymn section by many bands in Australia, Just As I Am, again, is just a magnificent piece of introspective writing. And so they're some of the composers that I like. Gilbert Vinter's Variations on a Seventh, Variations on a Ninth, I beg your pardon. An old piece that's been very much neglected, but what wonderful colours in the band, and a lot of Phil Sparks music that's been published in recent years. I remember we worked on for the Nationals the Music of the Spheres, and that's an extraordinary piece of competition, composition for a competition, but a wonderful piece of music, So there's a lot of composers that really move me, but I would say that the pinnacle of the German symphonic tradition for me is still Bruckner Symphony No. 8.
All right, interesting. I remember I played in Waratah with you, and when we played, I think in Geelong.
Yes,
it was down there. We played. It was Heaton was the played Heaton as the own choice, and I think we played Just As I Am as the.
We played Just As I Am as our hymn, and we played contest music as our own choice. Yeah. And we won the own choice.
We certainly did.
Yeah, and that was I think that's partly the piece too. Because not only is it technically difficult, but it has musically something to say of real depth.
Yes, and that the second movement is so deceptively easy. It's so deceptively easy notationally, but incredibly difficult.
Incredibly difficult to bring off, especially for the solo cornet.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. Many have sacrificed themselves on that.
Oh yes, they've been sacrificed on the altar of competitions over that movement. My word.
Very much. One last question for you. You're stuck on a desert. You're marooned on a desert island, and you've only got one album that you have with you. What album would that be?
Oh, it would have to be Bruckner 8 again.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, just the profundity of thought by a musician. I hear Bruckner's music as being the uh, the German high symphony development of the purity of Mozart. This simple musician who was the church organist um, in a Catholic church in Linz, in Austria, and you can just hear in the scoring of his ideas for orchestra, the grand organ is what he composed that music on, sort of thing. You know, jumping from manual to manual, whether it was the grand organ, the full organ being coupled to the pedals, and or you know having little woodwind sounds up on another manual. You know, and he jumps from one to one, and his profundity of writing for me is just beyond description.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of other music that I would like to have had on the desert island, but if I only had to have one.
You could only have one. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, that's very interesting. Thank you so much.